This video is intended to help ESC4C students set up a computing environment. This video will focus on creating a CentOS 7 virtual machine with the assumption that Oracle's VirtualBox has already been installed. Now, just to give you a little warning, this is a long video, about 15 minutes. There's several steps in the downloading and waiting for things to install. It takes a little while, but the cool thing is at the end you'll have a CentOS Linux computer to practice with. And that's significant because CentOS and Red Hat are very closely related. CentOS is like the free version of Red Hat. And recently Red Hat was just bought out by IBM for over $30 billion. So this operating system is a major player in information technology, and acquiring skills with this operating system could potentially help you get a job someday. So although the video is a little bit long, I think it's well worth the effort and the time. This outer box represents your physical computer running a Windows 10 operating system, and these are the components that we will eventually install, but right now we're focused on CentOS 7. So there's a few steps to do that. So let's take a look at that. The first step is to go to the CentOS.org website and download an ISO file. The second step is to create the infrastructure for the virtual machine, and that's similar to creating the hardware. And finally, we'll create the platform or the operating system. Okay, so moving back to step one, let's take a look at their website here. If we go out to CentOS.org, then and the /download, we'll see that they have a few different ISOs we can download. For this course, we're going to use the minimal ISO. Now, this minimal ISO will only come with a command line interface. It won't have a graphical user interface. We'll see that a little bit later. Now, if I clicked on that, it would take quite a while to download because the file itself is about 1 gig. So I'm not going to do that. I've already downloaded the file over here. It went to my downloads directory, and here you can see the ISO file that was downloaded. Okay, so one other side note before we get going, or a couple side notes. The first side note is this ISO file is actually going to act as a DVD. So if you were to load software on your physical computer, you might acquire the installation files on a DVD, and you'd put that in your DVD tray. Now, since we're dealing with a virtual machine, we don't have a DVD tray, so we will mount a virtual DVD player, so to speak, and use this ISO file as the DVD itself, which will contain all the installation instructions. The second side note I wanted to discuss was when we create this virtual machine, it's very similar to some of the services that are offered in cloud computing. So if you're familiar with cloud computing, there's Amazon's, there's Microsoft, Google, IBM. They all offer these services, and the types of services they offer are infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. We're going to actually do a couple of those things. We're going to create the infrastructure, and we're going to create the platform. So that's just a little bit of a side note, so you can kind of see that even in at this small scale, we're doing things that are done on a much larger scale, and this will help get you familiar with those types of concepts. The second step is to create the infrastructure. So now that we have downloaded this file, we're ready to open up VirtualBox and start creating the virtual machine. So let me close this out and bring up VirtualBox. So the first thing to do is to create the new button. And here, since we're creating a CentOS virtual machine, I'm just going to type that in, CentOS, and I'll put a 7 there just to indicate the version. And as you can see, I mentioned earlier that CentOS and Red Hat are closely related, and when we type that in, it automatically populated this field as a Red Hat operating system. Okay, at this stage, since we're creating the infrastructure part, you can see that we have memory and the hard disk here. So the infrastructure is really comprised of memory, the hard disk, and the CPU. Those are the three typical components. We're not really going to deal with the CPU, but we are going to look at the memory and hard disk. Although for the purposes of this course, we don't need to change any of these settings. I'm just going to leave them the way they're pre-selected. So the bottom line is we just have to type in a name and click create. Okay, now it's asking us to create a hard disk, and the file size here, it's pre-selecting as an 8 gig hard drive. And again, since this is a minimal install, we don't need much more than that, and this is really just for training purposes. So I'll click create. Okay, at this point we've created that IaaS, or infrastructure as a service hardware, and now what we need to do is create the platform. So in order to do that, we need to do this in a couple different steps. First of all, we need to go to settings, and remember I talked about the ISO file. So we go down to storage, we hover over this, and you can see this says add an optical drive, which is like a DVD drive. So we're going to create a drive, and then we're going to choose the disk that we want to put in that drive. And again, that was the CentOS 7 minimal. Okay, so we created an optical drive or a DV drive. We're putting the DVD in there, and we're going to click open. And now we have what's in the virtual world, a DVD loaded to do the install. One last note I wanted to show you here, since we're in this menu, is if you click on System and Processor, this is information about the CPU. Again, we don't really need to deal with that for the purposes of this course, so let's just go ahead and click OK. Now at this point, we have the hardware, we have our DVD in the DV tray or in the virtual DVD tray, and we're going to now start it up. We're going to start up the computer. The ISO is going to run, and it's going to lead us through the installation steps for installing CentOS 7. Where it takes a long time to load, I'm going to go ahead and cut out that video. Okay, so at this point you can see there's a countdown down here, and it will automatically boot. But what we want to do is arrow up, use the up arrow, click to select install CentOS 7, hit enter, and then we don't have to wait for that countdown. If any of these messages pop up here, you can close them out. Once the installation has run through some scripts, it's eventually going to come to this welcome screen. And here we can see that it's asking you for your language. Mine is English, so I will just go ahead and use English. At the bottom you can see this right control indicator. When you want to escape out of this virtual machine environment, you hit the right control key, and then you can move out to the screen here, and then you can also select the scroll bar. So you might need to do that. Hit the right control key to get out to the scroll bar and go down to the continue button. And then if you click back into the virtual machine, then you'll be back in that little environment, and click continue. And it will move on to the next screen. Let me move back up here a little bit. So these are all the different things you can configure during the installation. And the only thing we need to really pay attention to are the things with the yellow check boxes or exclamations. And so we'll give this a minute, and these messages will go away, but this warning message will stay, and we'll need to take action on this before we move forward. Okay, now these warning messages have cleared up, and we still have this one. So we just need to make sure that we tell VirtualBox where to install the operating system. So what we're going to do is go in here and click. And we only have one hard disk, or I only have one hard disk on this computer, so it's a pretty easy selection. I just select it, and then I can click up here and click done, and then we can move forward. Again, hit the right control key to move out to the scroll bar, go down, and then you can click the begin installation button. The first time you click in here, it's clicking inside the environment, so you may have to click it twice. And here we see that the startup continues. And we have another couple of warning banners up here. So we're going to we need to take action on the root password. Once we establish a user, which will be the root user with the password, then this warning message will clear up. So right now, let's go ahead and set the root password. Click once to go back inside the environment, and then click again. Now here it's asking for a strong password, so you can make up your own. Just remember what you typed here, because this is what you'll use to log in. And when you're done, you can click done. Now you've seen that these warning messages have cleared up and the installation continues. Now this part will take quite a while, and so I will be cutting out some video here. So once this part is done, then I'll start up the video again and we'll continue with the installation. After 15 or 20 minutes, the installation will complete, and you'll notice down here in the lower left that the status message says complete. And over here to the right, it will ask you to reboot the machine. So let's go ahead and do that now. Click inside the virtual environment and then reboot. When the reboot process finishes, and it will take 30-40 seconds to do that, you'll be presented with the login screen here, and this is the screen where you'll enter your credentials for the user that we set up earlier, which was the root user. So just type in root, type in your password, and now you will be logged in. At this point, you have a Linux machine that you can now practice your skills with. And so just to show you a few simple commands, you can type in ID, which will show you the user you're logged in as. You can print your working directory, which shows the directory that you're currently in. And you can do a listing of the files that are currently in that directory. So that should do it for this video. Thank you for watching.